Welcome to the November 2019 Hingham Historic Districts Commission meeting. Before we get started on the hearings, there's a few business items to cover. Did you want to cover yours first?
Good evening, everybody. I have in your folders, you'll see several items. One is an updated list of members. So please make sure that's yours. And I didn't three-hole punch it because people usually just shove that in the sleeve. The other one, the list of hearing dates, is three-hole punched if you'd like to put it in. But please look at the list and make sure your information is correct. If not, let me know and I will change it. Beyond that, I think that's all. Okay.
All right. I had a few business items to address as well. First is welcoming two new voting members to the commission, Catherine Daly and Carol Piles. And I'll put you on the spot for a second to tell us a little bit about your background and sort of why you decided to serve on the commission.
Go right ahead, Catherine.
I have been in Hingham for 23 years. I moved here because of Hingham's charm and beauty. And I have a small renovation and remodeling consulting firm, space planning predominantly, that I've been doing for about 15 years with my partner. And I have 2 kids, and that's it.
Okay.
Well, we moved here 46 years ago. Old timers. We've lived all that time in Glad Tidings Plain, first at 737, a lovely Greek revival that I still miss, and then moved down to Mildred Cushing's house in 727, and we've been there 44 years, and it's still Mildred Cushing's house in our neighborhood. So I'll have to be long gone before it becomes Carol Piles' house. I'm past president of the Historical Society, but that's not why I'm here. I'm an at-large member representing a historic district, living in a historic district. My fundraising background goes back a whole lot of years because I'm not 21 anymore, and I've mostly been fundraising for nonprofit organizations in Boston. Came back to live in Hingham when my husband retired from banking and decided to get involved and got into the Historical Society and loved it. And as I said, past president of that. And I'm just really looking forward to, I watch you all on television. You're all TV celebs in my life. And I look forward to joining you all.
Great.
Carol
See
if
we can help.
Spent a couple of years as chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
Yeah.
And she's just recently off of that. So we're lucky to have you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much for welcome aboard.
Thank you.
A couple more items. So I want to ask the commission if there are any conflicts with any of the hearings, if you want to just go around.
I think I should recuse myself from the Bates matter as being a close neighbor.
Okay.
I'm also going to recuse myself, friends, and I consulted on her space planning.
I'm going to recuse myself as well. They're my neighbors,
same here?
and they supported me in my project. So yes, and I was not part of the January 10th meeting in addition, so yeah.
Okay.
So why don't we go?
Yep. Actually, before you do that, just
Sorry.
Yep.
just to kind of hit through the list.
Okay.
Just to make sure we've got all of these covered. So is that it on 64 school in terms of recusal? And 361 Main or 215 Main? Any conflicts there? Okay, so on 361 Main, as 2 of our new voting members are new, and we're not present for 2 or 3 other hearings, they'll not be able to vote, but certainly be able to participate in the conversation. So voting members for that one, because
Carol and Catherine can't.
Catherine can't, so it would be Hans and I, and if all 3 other alternates were present, I'd like to appoint all 3 to be voting members on 361 Main. And then 215 Main, as that's a new hearing, the new voting members can vote. And so that would be the four of us. And then if I could ask Ben to be the fifth on 215 Main? Okay. Okay, that's the only business I had. So we might as well get started on 64, so if you guys wouldn't mind. Yep. Come on up.
I didn't copy for everybody because I was running out of ink, because this is so much, seriously, so much ink.
It's
I
okay.
just kind of wanted to throw out the old fence. Whoops, sorry, Andrew.
Oh, sure.
Not intended. And then you guys can just pass those around. I have just a little quick thing.
Well, if
Or
I
do you
could
wanna
just
start?
sort of get started and sort of address the topic. So, you know, we're here on this, for this hearing on this property for noncompliance with the Hingham Historic Districts Commission decision. So I just want to read a few things first before we sort of get into the details. So at a duly noticed public hearing on January 10th, 2019, the commission heard the application for project to make changes in additions to the existing hardscape at 64 School Street. The commission voted the following motion unanimously. So the motion reads, Commissioner Aborn made a motion to grant a certificate of appropriateness to 64 School Street for the proposed new brick driveway and side entry walkway based on the landscape plan dated October 23rd, 2018. A fence is not included in this approval. And then just to read part of the notes that led to that decision, read that would give the applicant, he suggested that tonight they could vote only on the driveway plans and give the applicant a chance to come back with revised plans for the fence. So tonight we're here to discuss the actions possible to remedy the non-compliant. So with that, I'd like to ask you what your proposal would be to remedy the non-compliance.
Oh, didn't really have a proposal. I kind of went about it the wrong way. I guess my one thing I can think of doing is just planting along it, planting evergreens to lessen it. But as I was saying here, it's only 16 feet. That is the side of the house and the back. And I guess I disagree, obviously, with the original no on the black fence, as I look across the street and see beautiful black fences all over our neighborhood. And as I said, you know, I pay taxes, I do everything everyone else does, and to me, that's just not something that's just not fair. So when our painter came over and said, I paint all the historic houses up in Cambridge, I was like, you know what, go for it.
Well, I think,
So that's where I was.
you know, and you know, the argument here is not really the color of the fence, it's non-compliance with the motion that was made when we were here. So, you know.
Could I just ask what that motion was based on?
Based on the hearing and based on the information that was provided in the conversation we had in the hearing. So we decided at that time, there was conversation about the fence color, but the motion was such that it would be left, and that if there was color to be, if this fence was to be painted, then you would come back and we would discuss that. Instead, the fence was painted.
It's in the, you can read the minutes.
It's right here.
And
Oh, okay.
you'll see what was said.
You weren't
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so my repair would be to,
So we went ahead and painted it, and,
against the ruling.
oh, okay, against the ruling.
Well, I thought we had taken the fence off the table, sort of. I thought we were doing just the hardscape. And then, as I recall, I said, let's take the fence away just so we can get the hardscape done.
Right, and then,
And then
the next step would have been to come in to review
Yeah.
the plans.
But the
for
way it looked,
fence.
it didn't look like it was going to pass. And again, sitting in my kitchen window, looking at two properties with black fences, walking past black fences every day, my frustration level grew to such a point that I was like, forget it. It's the one thing I didn't do that you guys asked me to do. I went back to our architect several times to change our drawings, all at great expense. I've did everything you asked. It's the one thing I was really wanting for the house from the beginning. Andrea knows. And I've got pictures there of it's 16 feet of black fence that is on that road. I mean, I'm happy to plant some trees, but I'm not going to get rid of the black fence. I mean, that's really where I stand.
So part of this, once I sort of go over this, I want to open it up to the commission to sort of get everybody's feedback on that. But the historics bylaw, section 9, paragraph 3, allows the commission to impose a fine for each day the violation exists. I'll just read that. So whoever violates any of the provisions of this bylaw shall be punished by a fine of not less than $10 nor more than $500 each day during any portion of which a violation continues to exist shall constitute a separate offense. The number of days the violation existed were counted starting August 27th, the day after the certified letter was sent, until today, which is a total of 80 days. So the low end of the fine is $10 a day, which would be $800, and the upper end, 80 days times $500 a day would be $40,000. And so I think with that, I'd like to open it up to the commission for feedback on what we've just discussed.
So just to ask again, you're, given those numbers that Mike threw out there, you still don't want to change this?
Again, to me, I think this is an HDC issue. Like, there's a lot of people in our neighborhood that have black fences. I know that they were not told no, theirs were up, but again, the fact that you approved those fences and not mine just seemed extremely unfair. So honestly, at this point, I'm so irritated by it because it's so unfair. I mean, I will happily read the reason this conforms to the neighborhood. I look at 2 properties that have black fences out of every window of my house, and I think they're beautiful. They're probably over 150 linear feet. Plus, there's at least 7 houses on School Street. The fence matches the trim on our house. I called Cambridge and Edgartown historic districts. They allow black fences. You guys have precedent on this. I know you don't have to work on precedent, but I've already talked to neighbors, and they're already in the future looking to have their fences in black. The white fences are ugly and dirty. This fence you guys all said was old and crummy looking. It was only 10 years old. It looks brand new. Looks brand new. And I just, again, if you guys are trying to get this HDC to grow in the town, to fight me on my tiny little fence seems outrageous.
So you had an option. You could have come back in, talked to Gretchen, or talked to Andrew, excuse me, about your concerns, or you did what you did. So
right.
My concern is just the disregard for, what the commission ruled on and what we stated, and you just
right.
did it anyways. That's my big concern.
Well, I guess, the painter was there. He's painting the house. I'm talking to him about how the fence hasn't passed. I don't know if I didn't realize that you guys were saying come back again. I mean, it was pretty clear that night that it was not going to go my way. I didn't see that coming back weekly is going to say, yeah, this week we think a black fence is great for you. There's no rhyme or reason. It seemed very arbitrary to me. So yes, when I was out there in the backyard with him, I'm like, you know what? Fine. I came into Andrea and I said, as soon as I called and asked what the certified letter was for, because I never actually received it, and she told me, I'm like, I was kind of hoping it would go. I kind of said it to him and went away and didn't really think much about it. And it's so beautiful, I was kind of hoping nobody would care. But obviously, I understand that, it was against the ruling. I didn't think coming back for a ruling was going to get me any further than just a stronger no in the thing. And it's my property and my home, and I'm looking at them all over my thing, and I pay taxes. I don't understand why I'm not getting what I want, which Tomas, who's on here, gets, and everyone in our neighborhood has. And I know there's people who are coming in front of you soon that want black fences in their yards to do their backyards. So, you know, maybe I've pushed the issue to the point where you guys now have to really look at this and deal with it, but to me, this is, they're all throughout this town. And fighting on this little issue to me is kind of a dumb place to put our feet in the sand, because we've got much bigger fish to fry than my 16-foot black fence, which I'm willing to do some landscaping around. But I think it's going to keep coming up. And again, how do you say yes to one, no to another? So my frustration won out, and I'm taking my punishment.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I think you've said what you needed to say. You know, so
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yep.
What would have been, I don't think we really know how that next discussion would have gone, because you have all sorts of information here about what surrounds you. So I think the discussion, who knows how that may have gone.
I thought
You
I
could have
brought
made
that up
that-
that night. I certainly brought Tomas's house up because it's so beautiful.
Well,
Sorry, Tomas.
I'll tell you, the opportunity was to come back,
Right.
to have further discussion, and that didn't happen. So that's why we're in this place today.
I get that.
I'm just getting used to the procedures here, but the first thing that occurs to me is that if we don't stick to what the committee says and enforce it, that throws it wide open.
Right, but where
I
did
could
that
knock
start?
down my barn and then come back and say, I'll take the fine.
Yeah.
I wish you'd come back and spoken to us a second time. I drove by today just to see it, and I spent a lot of time with interior designers and exterior designers, and it's the first thing you see. I don't want to talk you out of it, and in your eye, it's beautiful. To my eye, it's in front of the house being a beautiful, stately, father of the bride kind of, beautiful home. But I'm seeing black when I drive down the street because
So there's a
Are
black
you at the-
door, there's black shutters.
Are you at the
there's-
right house?
yeah, I'm at the right house.
It's on the
off
side.
to your side, yeah.
Yeah, it's not in the front of the house.
Well, it's standing right out. It's not in the
It
backyard.
faces a non-historical street, one entire side.
It's in the backyard, so I am thinking
I'm not sure
maybe
you
you're
had
at the
right
wrong house.
House.
It's not a father of the bride house. It's
Maybe you were
a
looking at.
small little
Addition
cape.
on the left.
It's a
Black.
small cape
Mm-hmm.
with, an addition on the right,
Addition on the light.
on the
Well, as I
right.
said, I wasn't here for the debate and the discussion about it, but I do worry that whatever the commission decided can just be ignored because the painter happened to be there that day. It doesn't sound right. Like, you should come back and talk to us and,
Again, my feeling that night was, and Andrea knows, I did not look to me like I was getting a fair shake, and it didn't look to me like I was going to get a different answer with the same people sitting at the table.
not the answer that you want.
Right. Well, and again, not the answer that I wanted, that my
With the
neighbors
input-
have gotten yes
With the
to.
input of 5 commission members who
Right.
unanimously decided that it wasn't the right thing to do, and discussed it during the meeting, how it was not appropriate.
And why
So
is
if you disagree-
Tomas's appropriate, and
Yeah.
the Falconeri's appropriate, and the Nash's, and I could go around the block. Why is theirs appropriate and mine's not?
Yeah.
Go back and look at the minutes, go back and look at the tape.
Okay?
Is there evidence there, or?
It must be.
I mean, the issue is the noncompliance with the ruling, and we can
Right.
debate the
Right.
color of the fence all night long.
Sure.
But the issue here is noncompliance, and we can't operate as a district with people not complying to the rulings. It's just, it's not fair. You say it's not fair to the next applicant who does participate and agree with the ruling and abide by the ruling. So, is there any other, do you have any other comments on this?
So I wasn't here for that particular night, and I can tell you, you're right, there have been rulings where it would be a black fence, sometimes it's a white fence, sometimes it's an unfinished fence, and every one of them is taken independently. I think just to touch on what everyone said here, we can't have people ignore our findings. And I like to think that we're collaborators, and had you come in, we would have had a discussion about it, and you might have gotten what you wanted. But because you ignored the finding, that puts us in a difficult position.
I agree. I agree, and I know I've done it to myself. I'm very aware of that, and believe me, it was a moment of, fine, just, I fully understand. Believe me, I'm ready to take my lumps. I don't know whether the lumps are a fine, or they're landscaping it, or they're whatever, but, I mean, I could certainly talk to the painter and see if he'll take it down to the natural wood, but I'm certainly not gonna buy a new fence. So, again, I think when you look at what was there and what's there now, I mean, you know, I think it looks beautiful.
So, for the commission and the suggestion of plantings, you know, does anybody see that as a reasonable remedy for this situation?
My feeling is that plantings die. As former president of the garden club, lots of times we put trees and hedges and all kinds of things, and you get transferred to Peoria and you get up and move, the next people come in and don't like them and down they go, and now we've got a black fence. So whether it's trees or shrubs or garden flowers, I just, I don't see that as an answer to the problem.
I agree.
Unless something can completely cover it.
So, you know, it sounds like the landscaping option is not a suitable remedy for the commission from what I'm hearing. So, you know, it doesn't sound like you're also not willing to change the color of the fence.
Well, what color would you suggest?
Well, this opens the debate here, but, you know, you also mentioned, you know, potentially having that fence brought back to what it was originally.
If they can, yeah.
If they can.
I'll look into it, I don't know. But my understanding was that my other choice was a white fence or a fence that matches the color of the house. And do you need permission to do those two things? Just leave here and paint it white or paint it the color of the house? Or is that part of the rule?
Well, I think that could be something that we could, I think, discuss. I mean, is that?
It would require a new application.
A new application. Okay.
Okay. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, in the
Yep.
Certificate of Appropriateness, the fence color was discussed as natural. No
Well,
other options.
It
You
is
gotta-
currently
I do.
natural, and the motion was that there was no motion on the fence, essentially, which would mean that it would be left until the applicant decided to paint it, at which time they would come into us and review that.
No, that's not it. You should-
Might be in there.
It is, I think. Yes, it is.
So, to the commission, is that something, you know, to consider a new application for the color of the fence? I mean, because the other option, you know, that we've also been discussing is the fine.
What about the opportunity of the Bates to talk to their painter and see what the response is, and if it's, I guess, undesirable effects, undesirable results, then we can talk about another application for a color.
Was the fence not considered in the last meeting? We were talking about the other things.
Correct.
It
It
was
was-
considered, but it was not part of the motion. There was.
Get written
it
into
was-
this.
Right. And the
The
motion.
motion did not include further discussion of the fence.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the original application was for, also included black fence. And that was denied, left out.
It wasn't denied. We didn't deal with it.
But it was part of the, it
Because
was
there
part of
was
the
a
original
concern on
application.
both parts, and so the upshot of that was that let's get your hardscape done, and then let's talk further about the fence.
I think getting back to a natural color would be an improvement over the black. I think a white fence would probably go better with the KP house that you have. I think that would probably be more of a kind of a lower profile color. It wouldn't kind of take your eye away from the house instead on the fence that it is now. So I think that would be an improvement. But I am still concerned just about disregarding the, the motion that we made and how we voted. I must say, I think
it was just sheer frustration at that time.
So I feel like, getting us back to where we were before would be very helpful, but I'm also at the same time I'm very concerned about just the haphazard kind of ramifications of this for future applications that we rule on. I mean, it's a problem.
But again, my feeling is if you guys had a precedent, you set it, and people could do what their neighbors do, as opposed to me looking across, seeing this and not being allowed, the frustration level wouldn't have been to that point.
We're just kind of going in a circular.
Right.
We're not making any headway.
I agree.
So I think we need to make a decision on this, what direction we're going to go in. But, I am concerned about, the color, the black color. I'm also concerned about the, just the precedent we're setting here.
Right. So, so let's then, as a commission here, then discuss the fine option in the value of that. On the low end, it's $10 a day at $800. The upper end at $500 a day is $40,000. I don't know that this constitutes an issue on the higher end clearly, but in terms of the fine, are there any thoughts on what might be appropriate in this situation?
Again, I'd like to see the Bateses go to their painter and see what the answer is. Get this fence, I guess he would power wash it and remove the finish.
I guess so.
And get it back to a natural color and see what the results are. I don't want to fine the Bateses at this point. I mean, I understand it's written into the rules, but if they're willing to work with the commission here and remedy this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way. I think if your intent is to make good on it and come up to whatever the decision of the commission is, then I would forego the fine. I think that your intention is important here, is to take care of the problem.
Well, again, what if it doesn't count? What if the painter says it's going to be bits of black left, between, and
he may have to do a sample just to see what kind of results.
You may want to price out a 16-foot cedar fence. See what it would cost for a new one. It might be cheaper.
Or another application that puts a color on it.
any color but black.
There was a discussion about your house, matching your house or white. Again, I wasn't part of that meeting. There's the one meeting I missed.
So
the choices are ask the painter about changing the fence, buying a new cedar fence, an application for a new color. Are those all, I mean, there's one step, and then basically then it's going to be an application for a new color. Because even to get a cedar fence, I'd have to come before you, or no?
yes, that would be a new application.
For a plain fence?
Yes.
Although I could approve that administratively.
Administratively, okay. And
Because
so,
it's replacing something that was there originally.
yeah. Okay. And so, if this were to go in the fine direction, we'd need to make a motion, right? If this is, the recommendation is to go with, consider the fence options we just discussed, would that also be a motion, or would the applicant just sort of reapply?
Reapply. it might be worth it just for Mr. and Mrs. Bates to have an idea of what the commission might consider an appropriate fine and what they might consider an appropriate fine, so that you know what you're dealing with here.
Well, that's true, because if the fine is the same as getting a new fence or whatever the fine is, then I don't know what the choice is there then.
Right.
I think we would certainly encourage you to make the changes. We'd rather do that than fine you. So I think if you want to look at it that way, I think if the commission would look at it that way, I think that would probably be the best avenue to go down. I would be in favor of, I think your original thought was, we're not changing anything, we're leaving
Right.
it. And if you still feel that way after you leave here tonight, I feel like the fine should be in excess of what it costs to put up a new one or take the paint off.
Well, and at that point, the violation is going to continue, right? I mean, the day of the violation, right, still.
Once the fine is imposed, then that's the end. There's no longer. I think what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that from now until Mr. and Mrs. Bates come back with a new application, are you saying that continues the?
Right.
I don't think it needs to. I think that we can request a new application, recognizing that perhaps we need to put a time frame on that.
Yeah.
And recognizing also that, given the weather, there's not much you can do right now, so.
So I'm just trying to figure out, so if we take a fine or we buy a new fence, you're saying that's about the same price, is what you're thinking? You're saying the fence, the fine would be equivalent, I believe you said, to?
No, I'd much rather see, this is just me, but I'd much rather see you get us back to where we were before. So a new cedar fence without paint on it, or come back with an application of a new paint color that you want to put on,
Okay.
other than black. So I would encourage you to go on that route. I think the way I'm looking at this is I would like to see a fine in excess of that, higher than that amount, what it's costing to replace it, or just take the paint off. Because I think we would like to all see you not get fined and just make it right.
Okay, so what about this? If I go ahead and do this, I get the paint taken off, can I come back again and ask for another black fence?
Wow.
Because, but the reality is my neighbors have it.
Wow.
I'm serious. I want this black fence.
I'm just,
I
Well,
know,
of course, no one can prevent you from
I'm just
submitting that
saying.
application.
right.
I mean, just take the fine then. Just take the fine.
Well, that's why I'm asking is, does it make more sense to take the
I
fine?
don't know, you gotta
I'm
figure
going to talk to the painter,
Yeah.
see what he can get it back to. The idea of buying a new cedar fence and putting it all in, I mean, I don't know what that's going to cost, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be reasonable. Again, what's the cost? So you're saying if that costs 10 grand, you're going to charge me 12? So that it encourages me to do the right thing, to do the thing that my neighbors have been able not to do, but I have to do. I'm just saying. You guys said I could come back. I should have come back. I'm saying I agree. I did it the wrong way. I'll get it back to the original and I'll come back. Say, would I like a black fence, just like my neighbors have? And you're going to say no again? And yet my neighbors have it. I just don't understand. I understand that I'm wrong. Believe me, I do understand that I'm wrong. I fully understand. I'm obviously willing to take a fine, figure it out, but at the same time, I think the fence looks beautiful. And I would agree in our neighborhood that there's a lot of people who obviously agree because they have beautiful black fences. So the 16 feet is on that road. The other feet are on Studley, which is a non-historic. Again, I've offered to do plantings, which I think is kind of interesting that the head of the garden club says plants won't live. But I do believe plants will live. Evergreens overall will live.
I'm not sure that was Carol's point.
Can I just have a question about process? So, and about the rules. If the Bates decide tonight to pay the fine that we levy, is this then a violation in perpetuity? How does this work?
No, then there is a fine imposed and the issue is done.
That's it. So it remains black, the fence?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So then we can discuss, if that's helpful, a $1 a fine.
Well, I think at least it gives me something to work with, to know.
Well, I would prefer you talk with your painter and see what can be
Right.
done.
I
mean,
will
we're-
definitely be doing that, but again, whether or not that means, I will talk to him about two things. I will talk to him about taking it off, what it'll look like. I don't think it looks good like that, so if white's my only option, I will ask him to paint it white. Again, I showed you the pictures of what white fences around this town look like, which is green, black, mulchy, and moldy, and that is on the north side of the house, so that's not gonna look great. I mean, I'd rather worry about somebody cutting down trees than have a white, cruddy-looking fence, because I'll tell you, I'm not gonna paint the side by Studley. The black, I talked to the painter, and all I have to do is paint the top, paint anywhere snow lands, and that's all I have to do to maintain that thing. A white fence, you look all over this town, every one of them needs to be power washed. It's unbelievable. They look terrible. And you guys want to allow vinyl, so we know what that's going to be. I mean, I'm just trying to be very honest here. I know, again, I did it the wrong way, absolutely did it the wrong way. But again, it is my home.
Right, no, I understand, but we now have to follow our procedure.
I understand. I understand.
Okay.
And that's why I'm trying to get to the procedure of what's the fine, what's the remedy? If the remedy is talking to the painter, am I fined all the way through until he can get there in the
No.
spring? And then, once it's painted, it's painted.
If there's an effort being made, then that
Yeah.
won't count as additional time.
That effort proves your intent to remedy. And
Would it be helpful to have a week and come back to another meeting in the future to talk to your painter and get his ideas?
Well, I could probably just talk to you, Andrea, couldn't I, instead of going in front, just, once we've thought about it a bit, and we know what the fine is gonna be, and we know what the cost of a new fence is gonna be, and what the cost of painting it is, and the more I think just sitting here of painting it white, I mean, I think that's gonna be, in the long run, the uglier option in the long
I
run.
must tell you off to the side, because I've gone through this experience myself. There's a little vial of stuff that the paint store can sell to you, to your painter. You put it in, you mix it up, and it stops all mildew, mold, everything. It really works.
Well, I
I
will
wouldn't
say
tell
I-
you that, but it really works.
My little walk, that's not what I'm seeing, but
They probably don't have the stuff, the
I know,
magic
but-
stuff.
I can't imagine painters painting fences don't know about the magic stuff. But
It costs
maybe they
them more
don't.
money.
So I think we need to move this along. We've got some other hearings coming. So I think it sounds like, we need to discuss the value of what a fine might be. To me, obviously, the higher end of the fine doesn't seem reasonable for this scenario, but are there any thoughts from the commission as to what might be appropriate?
My thought go back to what you decide to do. If you say, sorry, we're going to have a black fence come hell or high water, that's one fine, because that's going against what we've ruled on. If she comes back and says, yeah, but I can't change it till spring now because can't paint in this kind of weather, then we can hold off and decide once it's done. I think it's hard to decide a fine unless we know what's going to happen. Are we buying a black fence or?
Well, but I think the fine will be if the fence remains in its current state.
Mhm.
So if there's an attempt at remedying, whether it's a new fence or a different color, or there's a new hearing on it, then, the fine, is likely not to be assessed as long as we come to a mutual
Right.
agreement here. The fine is when, if you decide that you're just going to stick with the black fence and you're not going to change it and you're not going to try and remedy the situation. So,
Nobody wants to fine you.
Thank you.
I mean, you can tell.
Yes, no, I understand,
And
I understand.
if that were to happen, hopefully not, the money does go into the Preservation Projects Fund, which is used throughout town for various monuments,
A
markers.
forced donation, you're saying.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chairman, how do we move this?
Well, so in terms of a fine, I think, Hans makes a good point, there's a certain value to the work here that has to be assessed, and, the fine should be in excess of what the value of the work is. So we don't know what the value of the work is, so it's hard to assess what that fine might be. And so until we know what the value of that work is, it's really hard to give you a number. Is it
So I need to go out and
$5,000? Is
find
it
my own fine?
$10,000? Is
Yeah.
it,
I mean-
then I could, we could just say, okay, it's $10,000. We don't want to do it.
Right.
We're in a tough position here
Right.
where I could say, I could recommend, because I think, $10,000 is a reasonable fine for this situation, whether that's more or less than the value of the fence or repair work. I don't know, but that would be my recommendation.
Would you be able to come back in December?
We're going to be traveling.
What would
What's
that
the
The
date?
date is, we all have dates.
We're gone from the,
19th.
It's December the 12th.
We're gone the 8th to the 18th. The 8th to the, I'll tell you in
like
2
the
seconds.
11th, 10th, we're gone from the 10th to the 18th, so we would not be here.
Well, perhaps you can do your,
But can't you just do your homework
yeah, and then,
tomorrow?
let me know.
That's next week.
And then I can advise the
Painter
commission.
tomorrow. I'll call the painter tomorrow. And think about this.
Just how would we go about finding out why black fences are not liked or by the Historic Commission?
I
Where
think-
can we go to learn about that?
I think that with respect to those that have been installed, it would necessitate looking at every application.
So can I ask you to provide us a copy of all those applications, or 10 of them, or 15 of them in the last
Well,
X number of months?
that's a whole lot of work. I
Okay.
can,
But I just,
I can-
for our
yeah,
own
I
understanding
understand.
of why.
Let me see what I can
As we
do.
look at this and try and make up our minds as to what we
Sure.
want to do, I think understand that we did something wrong. That aside, whether we come back and ask for a black fence in this house
Sure.
or some other house, knowing the history and why they are not liked. I guess just looking at some of the quick notes, it looks like some people did like black fences, but some people didn't from this note, from the last meeting. But it would be great to understand that. So however, Andrea, if we can work with
Sure.
you to get that information.
I will do some digging for you.
That would be great. Because it seems subjective, but it may not
I
be.
can understand why you think
Right.
that.
Subjective's not good,
No,
no.
No, not for a committee that wants to
Right.
expand itself all over town. This is not, it's not what, of course, they want all the historic houses to be in the historic. It'd be great, why do I put up with it, and behind me on Studley, they're not doing anything? I'm just saying, so you're saying the Historic Commission doesn't want any other control throughout the town on making sure people aren't knocking down old homes on roads that are no longer, that aren't under your purview at the moment?
I can appreciate what you're saying. There are just so many factors that go into it. It's just not
I know,
I'm sorry, it's
I know,
just not a simple thing.
I know it's not.
I'll be glad to discuss it with you at length.
All right.
I'm curious, you're new
Right.
owners, fairly new owners?
2006?
When you bought the house, did you know you were in a historic
We
district?
were not in historic.
That is true. That was the extension to the Hingham Center Historic District,
That's what I'm saying.
which was in 2008.
Uh-huh.
So that would have been
So were we
decided at
grandfathered?
town meeting?
That was decided at town
Did
meeting.
that
and-
happen? Are we grandfathered, or?
I'm new.
No.
No. Okay.
You would have been had your fence been black at the time.
There was a black gate there, as I recall, and I showed you guys back then, is that we did have a black gate. but,
So
Yeah.
it sounds like the action is that you're going to look into the options with your painter,
Yeah.
and you'll discuss those with Andrea, and then we'll take the next steps at potentially another meeting.
How's that?
and but we don't have a fine that, unless you're saying $10,000.
Well, Michael has said,
I'm just saying
mentioned
to-
10,000, but
yeah.
I'm not sure that that's,
You can't decide to.
It's, right.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
the best course of action is talking to your painter, seeing what the options are, and then coming back.
Great.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Right, right, because they wanted to move other things forward.
Not a good idea.
Well, it was, we
Give 'em a note.
specifically said, you know, if you want to do something,
No,
come back.
to the
Right.
black.
Yeah. Well. Okay, 361 Main Street. Come on up. Okay. Welcome back.
Nice job.
Obviously, you made some modifications, you did a model. Why don't you tell us about what you got?
Yeah, so the main focus was the model, because after last meeting, I think there was some discussion about the garage in relationship to the front of the house being sort of more of the, you know, traditional 80s sort of colonial, and the 2D perspective just didn't show it. So we decided to make a model. I did not make the garage separate from the model, because really that's not something that my client is looking to have the discussion on. So, but I think the model sort of illustrates the point, where the garage is farther back, and the design intent with the ADU behind it, it will hide it, and it shows that it hides it. And when you drive down the road, you'll never see what's behind that house, because you're blocked by the existing house and just the way the road turns. And it's also perched up, obviously, on the hill a little bit. The changes to the design was just simply the pitch of the garage roof and some of the massing in the back that really wasn't up for discussion last time, because it's not really viewed.
And so I think the pitch of the
Yeah, I changed the pitch.
garage kind of was
Made it a
taller,
12
and then it
pitch.
flattened, and then you kind of brought it
Yeah,
in
I
the
brought
middle
it back to
somewhere.
the original.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice model.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Hugely helpful
The kids can play with it.
and very well done. It all comes apart,
It doesn't.
no options to,
It's
Try
hard to
out.
make them come apart.
okay. Are there any other information with the model or the drawings that you have that you want to
Oh, yeah,
address?
just materials. Basically, it's just a match to the existing, and then I call it for a wood simulated divided light window.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So I see the list coming around, but can you just walk us through?
Yep. Yeah, you know, the intent's fairly, you know, similar to some of my other projects. We're matching all the existing materials. You know, the plan is, unless you guys have a different discussion about it, is to do clapboards all four sides. You know, I'd be happy to do shingles in some parts of the back, if that's part of the discussion. But it's going to be painted white, you know, so trim boards, obviously, you know, 5/4 wood, cedar or pine, and profiles to match the existing, same with the window casings and trim. Along the back, it's a little more simplified without the band molding.
Okay. Any exterior light fixtures?
At this time, I don't have the information for that. I think we'll have a couple of sconces or some lanterns on the garage, and the porch will have recessed lights in the ceiling, so I don't know if these guys plan to do any wall sconces there.
And so So I see some modifications also, it looks like, to
The driveway.
the driveway.
Yeah, I think Hans had mentioned, originally I had a straight, and I agreed with Hans, to make it a little bit more interesting, to curve it around. So we did that.
Okay. And are there any other, I assume you'd come back for a hardscape?
Yep, yeah.
Plan,
Yeah, so
landscape plan.
the model just shows the patio, and I think that's too large. We'll discuss the design of that, but today is mainly for the house, and they'll come back for hardscape.
Yeah, okay. Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions before we sort of get into it? Okay. All right, anybody want to start?
Since I'm new and don't know anything, I'll go right ahead. Love Dr. Eldridge's house, and you guys are lucky to have such a beautiful home. It's really stately, and it's on the curve of Main Street, so you do get a good view all the way around. It's almost like you're driving around it when you go up Main Street.
We're not quite there yet.
Oh,
We're on 361 Main.
oh, I'm sorry. You-
I went to Dr.
But we will be there.
Yes, I know where it is.
I do not.
Well, I shouldn't have started that way.
right.
As I look at it, if it were mine, I would want to feature the front of it as much as possible. And as I look at the design of where the garage is going to be, it causes a little inset before you get to the door. And there may be interior reasons why you can, but my first instinct when I saw it was just 4 feet back, so it would line up more with that front and be a little further recessed from the front of the house. But now I see you're going to come in from a new driveway. You come in this way now.
Yes.
Where does that hit Main Street? Will it curve out and come out this way, I guess?
Yeah, it goes parallel to perpendicular to Main Street. It'll end up.
Okay, that's just my first thought, is I'd be tempted to push the garage back a little bit further.
So the intention there is I do want to break, the garage facade from the mudroom entry. And I think I have about a 2 or 3 foot jog there. I think we pushed it back. That pushes everything back, which would also make it a little bit larger. We're up against some side yard setbacks in the corner. So it wouldn't be as easy just to simply stretch it back, because we're right at the side yard setback with the corner of the back.
Anybody else?
Thank you for the changes. And your collaboration efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love the new driveway location. I think that's going to make it much more graceful. And the change to the garage pitch. And I mean, I'll just point out what I said in the last meeting, and that is I support the project. There are houses of similar size in the immediate area. You have pushed that garage back and therefore reduced its presence, its prominence. And you're also up on a hill, so I think that's all going to be very helpful. And lastly, it would be relocating the barn, which is wonderful. That's great.
Great model. Probably the best one I've seen.
Street one was pretty good too.
You can do the gingerbread houses.
It really does make a difference.
Yeah,
it's huge.
it's an impressive model. So, that being
Not that it's
said,
impressive,
I know.
that being said,
a model helps.
still like to see the garage detached. I just would like to see some more compatibility with your streetscape and the, it's going up and down Main Street. Everybody's got a detached garage. It's just such a high-profile property. I would just, it doesn't have to be a big separation, but just let the house breathe, keep it intact, keep the integrity intact. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. Your immediate streetscape everybody's got a detached garage there. I just want to see you protect the integrity of that main house. That's all I'm kind of looking at here. So,
I'm sorry.
so, you know, when we talked last time, it was just, you know, I had moved your existing garage over. You know, if you want to do something with a newer garage and just create a little bit of space between the two and let it breathe, I think it would go a long way for me. You know, the other thing is, you've got an acre of land, so you've got a lot of flexibility. It's very rare, it's very unique. There is a house, and I'm not going to throw somebody under the bus here, but at 48 Middle Street, where they've got, it's a very similar house, and this is one of the first things that we, you know, when I came on the commission, we were grappling with. And nice detached barn, setback, fence. You can solve a lot of the issues with, I think, the mobility of your folks, if that's an issue, by pulling up with that driveway, just hopping right out on the porch, pulling into the garage on the side. It's just, I just see the layout would work really well. I mean,
All right, so let me just bring up a few of the comments. I know I'm interrupting a bit, but I think it's important to know that, as we discussed last time, when you take the garage and you move it away, so part of the concept with this is to hide the ADU. When you take the garage and you move it away, you're going to view the entire ADU. And in my view, when you look at that as it's shown, it does the job. It's hiding that space. If you take the garage and move it away, you're making it worse.
Okay.
That's why it's designed that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I think the Kirks have been very responsive in many of the elements of the design, making this more compatible with the neighborhood. I think there is some emotional separation between the garage and the rest of the house. I feel like the original house has a presence there that is non-trivial. I think the lack of the cupola elimination has increased the simplicity. I can support this proposed design.
Thomas?
First of all, thank you so much for taking the cupola off. And second, I also like the pitch of the garage, the way it stands now. And thank you for the model. As I said in the previous meeting, I think this is a great improvement from where we were originally in terms of the massing. But I just personally, I really would like to see the garage detached, if any way possible.
Do you guys
even if you went up higher on the ADU with the second story? It's just when you look at the whole thing together, it's just it's.
Now remember, you only get to see it from the street. I mean, it's a model, we can turn it around. So I agree, from the back it looks pretty massive, but from the front you don't view that.
I think the fact that it's sited on a hill. And that front, that original volume was so close to Main Street, it really recedes the rest of it. And hiding the ADU, I think, is most important.
I would agree with that.
Is there a way to extend the middle section, that almost like the mudroom looking, I guess that's the ADU. I didn't see the actual floor plan, but if I could just point on that.
Yeah, and it's the mudroom in front. You can extend that.
So I was just wondering if by extending this section here, it gives it almost a
Yeah, you extend it to the left.
and giving it more of a traditional rural feel. Maybe it would hearken to more of a barn structure on the side versus.
I think it may just make it feel a little bit bigger. You know, we actually
Feels like it
moved
would give a little distance from the house and maybe give you the illusion of.
I don't know if it's going to do that, but one of the other plans had it a little farther away, and I moved it closer.
If I could just sort of, you know, I love this model.
It's just chipboard.
What's that?
It's just chipboard.
I know, but it's so.
Does the trick.
It's so effective.
It's probably
in-
one of the best we've,
But it's so effective in this conversation. The scale's perfect, you know, you've got some material, you know, on there, and so,
Detail.
yeah.
Even the porch.
And, yeah, and I think, I mean, this clarifies a lot of things for me, and while sort of, yes, an attached barn in my mind is a better solution in certain applications, I think we're gonna be struggling with the ADU situation on future applications and trying to figure out a way that we can effectively deal with that situation. And I think the fact that you've already will be moving the existing barn out towards the back, if you move that and then you have another separate one, I think there's a lot of pieces going on there. The fact that it is up a hill, the fact that, you know, most of this stuff is behind, that you won't see, you know, I can certainly get behind what you have here. And the fact that you've, you know, since taken that piece off the side that was on there originally too, I think, you know, it helps a lot. So I know we've been talking about this detached garage, detached barn from the get-go, and there's never been a willingness to do it. And, you know, I'd hate to keep dragging this on if we keep sending you back detached
it's a
or
non-starter
not.
for these
So,
guys.
you know, I'm not sure what the commission feels, but it seems like we've got to, you know, decide on something tonight in one way or another. You know, it sounds like there's some support for it in its current state. It sounds like there's some who may not be in support of it. So, you know, I'm not sure how much more debate is effective, because we've kind of gone 3 meetings and we're here. You know, it seems to me we should probably make a vote on this tonight.
would going through the worksheet help?
I think so. Yeah, that's a good, we'll kind of march through that. So,
Chairman, can I ask one
yeah.
question? Will we be voting on the driveway as it stands on the plot plan as well?
I mean, I might suggest, I like the idea but you're gonna have to come back with a hardscape plan anyway. So in my mind, I would almost want to separate that and say, forget about the hardscape in the driveway, come back when you've got it all figured out. But I think providing some commentary on that, I think, would be helpful for the applicants.
So, sorry.
I was going to say the same thing. Do you have to get permission to cut into Main Street with a new drive?
It's a DPW thing, so yeah, you got to get.
That's already been done?
No, not yet.
It's not, it's in the works.
Because if you can't, that changes everything.
Oh, it changes everything, yeah.
I haven't had a problem with that in the past.
So I like the whole curve on the driveway and everything else. I just, my only thing would be to make it narrow.
Sure.
So looking at the drawing and trying to measure it up, to me, it came out somewhere between 18 to 19 feet in width, which just is a very
Yeah,
wide
no,
driveway.
I think it's like 14 feet wide.
Okay,
At least that's what my intention was.
Okay, if that's the intention, then.
It does grow as it gets to, into.
As it
the-
approaches
yeah.
the garage.
Which makes
itself.
sense,
Yeah.
if you need to like pull out and make a turn and so on and so forth. I was just worried that at the opening, trying to measure it, it came out around 18 feet. And that to me just looked like a lot.
I agree.
Okay.
I think we may also want to consider extending the driveway perhaps to the left-hand side of the garage a little bit, because we will need parking spaces.
For
more than
additional
2 cars,
space, yeah.
And, again, turnaround
yeah.
space for Main
Okay.
Street, yeah.
But would we then consider that as a different application at that point?
I think it could be part of the, I mean, I would recommend really I mean, you've kind of got a suggestion of what that would be, but, I mean,
I think it's wise to, there's no dimensions on that. There's,
right,
I mean,
come back with a hardscape
I
plan.
feel
Perfect.
comfortable that way, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's just.
No, I don't want to be in violation of anything.
$500 a day goes really fast, Joe.
All right, why don't we, we'll go through the worksheet. So I think, I'm sure, Jonathan, you've heard us kind of walk through the worksheet. This is sort of guidelines that help us make our decisions on these hearings and some of the things that we look at, which have been all part of these conversations. So the intent, and there's a lot of bullets, and we'll kind of walk through these. The intent is not each application has to hit every bullet. It's just the intent that we're sort of meeting our guidelines, and this is a way for us to sort of quantify some of the things that we're talking about. So the first one is in regard to site. Site new construction, so that is compatible with surrounding buildings that contribute to the overall character of the historic district. Consider the relationship of the addition, alteration, or infill construction to other buildings along the street. So does the new building reflect the site factors that are common on the street in terms of setbacks, orientation to the street, spacing, distance from adjacent buildings, visible from a public way? Is the proposed new addition placed so that it will minimize the visual impact on the historic structure?
Yes.
Generally, yes.
My view on this is that, as far as the first sentence, site new construction, is that it's compatible with surrounding buildings. I would say no, not compatible, because of the attached garage. I think it's a deviation from the streetscape, the immediate streetscape, and most of Main Street, for that matter.
Okay, scale. So is the scale of the new construction consistent with the width to height proportions and floor to floor proportions when compared to adjacent structures and to the site? So does the new addition overpower the existing historic building?
No.
Massing. Is the new construction compatible with the adjacent historic buildings and other historic buildings in the streetscape in terms of height, design, materials, roof forms, foundation, footprint? And is the new addition over 50% larger in square feet than the existing historic building?
Did we identify that?
The areas are
50%?
on the area calculations are on the floor plan sheet.
I thought this one was under 50, I recall.
So some of you guys that don't know the house, there's a large addition off the back that's being removed, very
Right.
similar in size to the main body of the rear addition.
Right, we did calculate a net number that it was
Yeah, it's
knocking on the door.
Yeah,
But it was under.
close.
But it was close, but it was,
Yeah,
That was my
it's-
recollection.
It's close,
Yeah.
but it looks like it's just under.
So, no.
Correct. No.
I have a concern with the attachment of the garage and the footprint. Additional 25 by 25 gets you over 600 square feet of additional footage. I think the massing is an issue for me in terms of the footprint. Without it, I don't have a concern if it was detached.
So you're saying that because the garage is attached, it
Mhm.
creates a larger mass?
Larger mass, larger footprint, 25 by 25 space. I think the predominant angle is going to be this angle that you're going to be looking at. So you're going to be seeing the front, the sides, and the garage. So it's considerable massing from that angle. It's fine, good.
Proportion, is there a harmonious relation of each part or facade of the building to the whole? I would suggest that
Did
there
we do
is.
height?
did we do?
D,
yes, we did do
skip height?
We skipped height.
Apologies. Is the height of the new construction compatible with the adjacent historic buildings and other historic buildings in the streetscape?
I think
Is the-
yes. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yes.
No, I was going to say yes.
Is the height of the new addition subservient to that of the existing building? I would say yes in all.
It doesn't show it well in the model, but it's 2 feet lower, the ridge.
Okay. This one,
2 feet lower.
this one here?
Yes.
Okay. So
No
back-
issues here.
No issues, okay. So back to proportion. Is there a harmonious relation of each part facade of the building to the whole?
Yes.
Yes. I would say so. And then rhythm, does the new construction reflect the rhythm of the surrounding buildings in a manner that contributes to the special character of the historic district?
I think yes.
Yes.
For me, it's no. The reason being the
I say no to that.
attachment of the garage is breaking from the rhythm of the other buildings on the street, immediate buildings and the Main Street buildings. Typically, colonials, Georgian colonials, do not have attached garages, and that breaks with the compatibility and the rhythm through the district.
Okay. Any other
I agree.
detailed comments?
I keep seeing a modern garage in an old house.
I'm sorry, Carol.
Could you repeat that?
comment?
I'm still having trouble with the garage. I can't keep my eyes off of it because I know what the house looks like as you come up. That's a modern garage. I even wondered for a while, what if the curved road came in and you entered the garage that way, so you didn't have the front garage doors looking out at the street?
I think some of the pushback for that, because we did discuss that last time, was
Oh.
even on that side, we felt that that was more prominent, because you're going to be coming around the turn, you're going to see that.
I
So we felt by the time you're, at the point of the garage, you're already
Yeah,
past it,
yeah.
and you don't even see the garage doors as prominently.
Just as there was some way we didn't have to have it.
Carol, I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I'm not looking to go back to debate, but I do think that Ben had a good point, that it does actually hide the ADU, and you
Yeah.
would have just more of a separate massing, and then probably a separate garage than at the time.
I'd love to see.
But I'm sorry, I wasn't looking to open up the discussion.
No, and
Good to
I
have
wasn't here
comments.
for the last meeting.
Yep.
I just would love to see an old barn there instead of, or is there a way to make a garage look like an old barn? But that's what would have been with that house.
Agreed.
What if it was treated more like a carriage house? Would that be a more appealing scenario for the roof line to be pitched the other direction, and then some kind of carriage house features brought into it to bring it all a little bit lower and more, right now it looks like a modern garage to me, instead of a historic place where you might have stored a carriage or animals or that kind of thing. I'm just wondering if maybe there's a way to tweak it to look a little bit more carriage housey, because I think that would be the era of the house.
So, are you suggesting the roof, the pitch of the roof turns in the other direction, or go on the other side?
That's how I see, I've seen carriage houses with the roof pitched in the other direction and maybe a low dormer, and that's maybe your whole eye will go down a little bit. Because right now your eye is going up and it's quite prominent. But if you have the roof pitched in the other direction and you have a low dormer, then it's going to bring the visual of it lower and less prominence to the house.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I was thinking my own house, 1791, and our barn, which is even older than the house, faces the other way. The roof comes this way, and there are two doors to go in with cars. But it looks like the original barn. It doesn't look like a modern garage.
And perhaps there's a way to treat it with the similar treatment to the way the front door is treated with the.
So just so I understand this, so you guys are saying that a typical barn doesn't have the gable facing forward?
No, I'm thinking more of a carriage house versus a barn.
What's the difference between that in your mind?
I guess in my mind, a barn has more of an agricultural farm connotation versus a carriage house, which is a little bit more stately for this home. this is an era, it seems like a later time to me, and it just appears that a carriage house would be more stately and more, because it already has a barn. The barn's in the back. Maybe a carriage house would feel more, and bring your eye again. I think the gable, I think it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but the gable draws your eye up and draws a lot of attention to it. And if the roof was pitched the other way with a low slung dormer, maybe it would be less prominent. Just a thought.
So, you know, it sounds like there's some differing of opinions on the design, on the rhythm portion here. But, you know, why don't we sort of get to,
But I don't think it disrupts the rhythm of the neighborhood in a unacceptable way. There might be some objection. I think the rhythm notion being in the single site itself might have been what Catherine was concerned about, or maybe I misunderstood. I think in terms of the neighborhood, though, it seems consistent with the neighborhood to me.
My original design had that. That roof was turned. The gable peak was that way, and you guys had issues because one of the comments was a hodgepodge. So one way to limit that was to turn it. And so you're getting rid of all the different competing gables on the side, and we pushed it back. So kind of already went down that path and remedied what I thought was remedied in this version. It's a little bit difficult because we had two new people on the board.
Well,
didn't go through all the process
right.
before.
Yeah.
Well, and to clarify, I'm not sure if you were all in the room prior to the conversation about introduction of our new members. So, because they are new voting members, both Carol and Catherine, they are not able to vote on tonight's application for that reason. But we certainly want to hear their comments as it relates.
The reason I bring it up is now the conversation is going a little bit different direction when we've already covered this piece.
Apologies.
Nope, no apologies. Nope, not at all.
Great input.
This is an open forum.
Like it from the beginning.
Yep.
That's what he originally submitted.
Because if you were to detach it, you would still have the mass of the
addition,
ADU.
okay.
That would not go away. And I do think that I feel, looking at it the second time, I agree with Ben that the way it's sitting right now, I do think that you hide that, otherwise it becomes another separate building on the property.
So why don't we continue with our worksheet? We've got a couple of points left here. So the next one is design of the new construction. So is the design of the new construction architecturally compatible with the surrounding buildings that contribute to the overall character of the historic district? If new construction is on an existing building, is the design such that if the new construction were to be removed in the future, the existing building would be intact?
So reversibility, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Compatibility for me, no,
compatibility now.
for the reasons discussed earlier.
And then the last one is materials. Are the materials proposed for the new construction compatible with the historic materials and finishes found in the surrounding buildings or the existing building, if an addition, that contribute to the special character of the historic district?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well,
More.
and then demolition. And so there is some demolition here of some portions of the existing building, maybe not the original historic structure, but does the proposed demolition apply to a main building or an outbuilding? It's the main building. Is the entire building or a specific portion proposed for demolition, a portion, which is the rear portion? Has evidence been provided to justify demolition?
And other than our site visit. I mean, they're clearly not original.
Right. That was certainly built at a later date than the original portion of the house.
Questionable foundations.
Right.
I think the new plan brings it back to what it would have looked like before the 1920s or
Right,
whenever
right,
those things were
right.
added, yeah.
Yeah.
Have reasonable alternatives to demolition been explored? I'm not sure if that's relevant, if there's not an issue for the demolition. And then will demolition adversely affect adjacent historic buildings or the character-defining nature of the streetscape?
No.
Okay,
And the Kirk's willingness to move that barn in the back.
yeah.
Are you planning to put a slab down?
So I've had Gordon building movers, or whatever they are, out to the house to take a look. And I actually spoke with him yesterday. I think he talked about putting down, actually, I believe, like a foundation with a wood floor. And I have a question for you, though. I was going to ask this before we leave. Based on the site plan right now, does the garage have to go in that exact location? And again, I am not looking to be non-compliant. So, and we could certainly, once we, we're trying to get through this process, so once we have a better idea that we can move forward, like I think on the site plan, maybe the garage is pushed a little bit farther back than we might like to have it. Could we come back and discuss?
So my question would be the order of operations. Is your intent to start in on the house first? Assuming you get approval, are you going to start in on the house first, and then this would be a secondary phase, or does it have to be tackled right away?
It's going to be in the way, they'd have to at
Yeah,
least
I
move
think
it
that-
temporarily.
yeah.
I see.
And place it someplace.
So
on
there's
the
no way we could
property.
put this on the hardscape plan?
I mean, you could. Yeah, I mean, I think we can get a hardscape plan quicker than they're actually going to dig in.
So typically, the process of moving a building is once it's lifted, and it's on its cribbing, right? It then needs to be moved. So it could be moved slightly, and then all the work on the house.
Okay.
And as long as the building mover understands that he's turning over his beams and his cribbing for a certain amount of time,
Okay.
they may be willing to do that and then you could come back with the hardscape plan.
That
But
would
the
be
building is
ideal.
actually lifted, held over its site.
Right.
Excavation equipment is, busy working underneath it, as well as putting in a new
Right.
foundation before it gets set down.
That would
They
be
don't-
ideal, I think,
Yep.
to just see the massing of what this looks, and then just be able to position that,
I mean, I got a layout, actually, I have it on here. I mean, they may only have to move it back about 10 feet to allow for the dig and the overdig to happen. Actually, it doesn't touch it right now. It's, that second dashed line on my site plan is actually the concrete curb in front. So it could actually probably remain in place. And
If it can remain in place, I think that's going to be your best value. If you do have to move it
Yeah.
temporarily, then it becomes a question of economies of scale. You'll have the excavation equipment there, you'll have a form guy
Right,
there.
right.
There'll be a survey crew. I mean,
Right.
you're just inviting all those people back again.
Right.
If you can take care of it all at once, that's always best.
Right.
So if the building can stay, in these initial,
if it's accurately showed on the site plan that I was given, it looks like you'll have plenty of room. We'll be 8
Okay.
feet away from it, and that's enough to.
well, there's a lot to think about. Certainly, I mean, in terms of tonight, if we move ahead with a certificate of appropriateness and put it to a vote, we could always leave this out of it, and it can come back on the hardscape plan.
I think
Gives you maximum flexibility.
Yeah, and, I might maybe suggest that if there is a motion that we're suggesting, because it can't stay where it is, right?
It's
You
gonna
build
come
this,
down.
we know you can't do that, so part of the motion could be, the barn's gonna get relocated.
Yep.
It's just a matter of its final location to be determined maybe at a later date. Because what I don't wanna do is you build this, and not to say you'd wanna leave it there, but we wanna make sure it's not there.
But is there a location that would be purely objectionable to the commission? It's hard to imagine you intending to put it someplace that we would say, oh my gosh, you can't put it there.
Yeah, but I think more thought needs to be put into its location, because, we're focusing on this right now. The idea of moving that was,
What you need to ask Jimmy, get it up on the cribs, right? Put it back on the lot. Get your sight lines from the back of the property, looking out the
Right,
windows.
right.
You want to look into the backyard, you want to have
Yeah.
that sight line. See where you want it. You may want it off to the left a little bit
Yeah.
more. You may want it back a little bit
Yeah.
more. Come back with a hardscape plan and where it's going to be, and, it could sit back there for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I had a building moved on my property, and Gordon was the one that, they were the ones that did it. And they put it further back than where it needed to be originally,
Okay.
simply just because we needed the space to
Yeah.
work with.
Okay.
And then once everything else was in place, it was put back
Great,
where it was on the approved hardscape
okay,
plan.
that's great, thank
So,
you.
yeah, it was moved out of the way so that everybody
Yeah.
could get around and
Yeah.
work and do what they needed to, and it was out of the way and nothing was going to happen to the building. And then later on, it was brought back,
Excellent.
so, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Would somebody like to make a motion? And just to clarify, voting members on the hearing tonight will be Ben, Hans, myself, Thomas, and Justin.
I can
Wanna
make the
make a
motion. Make sure I have the proper plans. I've got a revised 11/1/2019. Is that right? Okay. I'd like to make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 361 Main Street. Plans submitted, revised date November 1st, 2019, with the exterior material list addendum. Plans as drawn with the exception of the driveway and the patio, both to be submitted on the hardscape plans at a later date. Exterior lighting to be submitted.
just one thing on the hardscape plan. Because if the house's relationship to the grade, the porch is actually a patio, so, yeah, so the porch on the side, and I call it out in my materials list as being a 2-inch bluestone with random pattern.
Okay, so the patio or porch.
But that's the patio on the left side, not the.
Got it, not the patio walk. Okay, so the patio walk is excluded from the certificate of appropriateness, but
Okay.
the porch on the left-hand, so that's not a step-up wood porch.
No, so we're very close to grade. We're
Got it.
fighting it as we go back, so
Okay.
I made it into a hard surface.
Okay, do the commission members see that?
It's depicted in
So
the
you were,
model as well.
with the exception of the driveway,
And the driveway, that will be submitted with the hardscape plans, and, also with the exception of the patio/walk, that's on the right-hand side of the property. And also the location of the barn, also to be submitted with the hardscape plans, or a later application. Color as exists, right?
White with black. The only thing that's not on that material list that I forgot is the shutters, so the woodworking shutters.
Oh, okay. So woodworking shutters. So cut sheets for exterior lighting is separate.
And that's the motion.
Seems to be it. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Passed.
You got it? You passed?
thank you. Thank you. Oh, You can put that,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
don't forget your model.
Yeah. That's great. That's,
I'm gonna let you keep it from now on. I don't know. Do you have a safe place for it? No.
Thank you. All right, 215 Main, welcome. Sorry, we're running quite a bit late tonight.
I feel like no model's going to hurt us tonight.
And I just, before we get started, I just want to clarify voting members on this hearing. So we do have 2 new voting members on the commission starting tonight with Carol and Catherine. So they will be voting members on this hearing, along with Hans, myself, and Ben.
John Teriyaki Architectural Design, here with the owner, Jim Magner. And would you like me to give a little summary? Sure. So 215 Main Street, located actually as part of the same cluster of properties that we were here for last time. The empty lot on 219, now 215 is over here. Existing house from 1824, I believe, 27. And there are no changes proposed to the main house. And the main house is basically have a kind of a T-shaped floor plan with a rear addition. And then behind that, there are a couple of small masses. There's a small screen porch coming off on this side. So that will be, I'll just switch to the floor plan real quick. So on the left are the existing floor plans. So Main Street is over here. Here's the main house. Screen porch that was added on. And then the rear addition that continues here as a 2-story piece, then steps down to a funny looking 1-story piece. And that's that photograph back here. I believe this was a doctor's office. Exactly. It's this piece right here. It's a 1-story piece, and can't really see it clearly in this photograph, but if you zoom in closely, you see 2 elliptical arches. So this was clearly a carriage house. So that portion of it is definitely historic. And they left the arches and they infilled them with the window configuration. And then inside, it was renovated into almost like a small office. I think that was the doctor's office. There's a small bathroom in there. And the project is basically modifying the roof line of this piece and going up a second level over that. And then modifying the floor plan to provide access to that new second level over this, but preserve the lower, the arches and the way those windows were inserted, so preserve that portion. That's basically what the project is. Switch back to the floor plan. So on the left is the existing first floor, on the right is the proposed first floor. They're almost identical. Some interior floor plan changes to open up the kitchen. The only portion of that that's relevant to the exterior are 2 new windows proposed over here. They're labeled with small circles, type 2 windows, and I'll show you on the elevation what the existing facade looks like there versus proposed. Arguably, that's the part of this house which is so symmetrical and balanced, but it does get a little irregular on that side anyway when it comes to the windows. So we're hoping that putting 2 matching windows to replace what's here would be acceptable. And that mainly has to do with wanting to have a kitchen counter on that side, essentially. And then just going towards the back, opening this room up as a bonus room inside that little 1-story piece, putting a little stairway inside, And then this is the second story portion of that piece. Stairway going up, a small bedroom suite up there under a gable roof, and the dormer facing the back of the house. Other than that, there are really no changes on the second floor. And then elevations, again, these are organized, proposed at the top, existing at the bottom. So obviously front, they're identical. Here's the left side, I guess the south side. Again, the existing piece with the carriage house arches and windows, and the proposed roof line that's going over that with a 12-pitch gable roof and a shed dormer behind, which is really not going to be visible from Main Street. But we are holding back that shed dormer a couple of feet on both sides. Here's the view from the backyard. This is basically what that photograph was that I showed you earlier. This one right here with the asymmetrical gable that's existing and proposed. You would see the shed dormer and the side facade from the backyard. So that would not be visible from Main Street. And then this is the right side of the house, the north side. Again, the new peak steps down, edge of the shed dormer. And then we have a little mini connecting roof to the house, mainly for waterproofing purposes. But one interesting thing we're trying to accomplish there is actually preserve the, if you look over here, this is the back of that little two-story leg that was added on. And there are 2 square windows at the top and 2 French casements. And we are trying to preserve the 2 square windows and half of the French casements. So I guess they would become 2 picture windows, essentially, removing the inner half of the French casement. If you see the dashed line here, that's that connecting roof that joins this piece to the main house. Anyway, long story short, we're trying to preserve some of those rear-facing historic windows as this roof integrates to the main house. But essentially, that's the project.
So I've got a couple of questions. So how much of this will you see from Main Street? Do you have photos there? I mean, is it?
The one photo I don't have is kind of a diagonal photo, almost like from this angle, looking back. I think you will probably catch this peak.
Yeah.
I don't think you see this portion that much right now, but you probably get a glimpse of that peak up here.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Yeah, a lot of it's covered by 217 as well. And because
Yeah.
you kind of come, when you, on that part of Main Street, you're kind of actually facing away from the house as you're driving by and walking by. And when you're facing in that direction, 217 is, the cottage is kind of in your way. You can kind of see it on the map.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess my follow-up to that would be, how much of the existing carriage house are you demoing? Is it just the roof?
It's just the roof, yeah.
It's just the
Just
roof, and
this
then you're adding?
top shallow triangle, which is probably not original. I don't know what kind of a roof it had originally, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was probably added on in the 50s or 60s, I'm guessing, but I don't really know.
So the walls will stay. Are you replacing
Yeah, the walls will
the
stay.
windows and any of that trim too, or are you repairing?
No, the
it?
intent was to not touch this trim, and
I
essentially.
mean, unless it's rotted or, you know, but
Yeah,
fix
other
it.
than repair.
Yeah, repair, exactly.
And the windows are staying as is?
That's the current plan, these 2 windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are, I think they were probably added in the 70s. They do look like they're wood,
Yeah.
but they're not original
Yeah.
wood. They're
And
just.
we're not wedded to that either. If you
Yeah.
had suggestions, we're open to them.
Okay.
I like that. I like how you kept that. I think it keeps the history and the evolution of the house in mind. I really think that, I appreciate that aspect.
In fact,
I-
even
I-
the hinges are there, sorry to interrupt. If you look closely, they left the hinges for the doors on the facade.
One thing I feel like is, as you're driving down the hill, you have a long exposure to that side of the house, even with the cottage there. And the dormer on the back of the proposed second story. I wonder, it feels a little big to me, and I just wondered if maybe the dormer needed to start at the ridge, or could it start foot or a foot and a half down from the ridge?
This point right here, can it come
Yeah.
down? I think it could come down a little bit. It could probably come down 6 to 8 inches and still have a decent slope for a asphalt roof.
And then, without compromising the functionality on the interior, could you bring the the rear face of that dormer to be a foot or so in from the wall of the garage?
Yeah, that's part of our MO with these shed dormers, but in this case, it was getting really tight up there in that little suite, which is why and the fact that it was facing the back and not visible from the street. I think it may be possible, but this is already getting pinched down a little bit with the headroom up there.
Is that, those are built-ins on that side? Is it
Yes.
like gonna be an office or something like that?
It's a guest suite.
Guest suite.
It's more the bathroom, I think.
The
The
bathroom.
baths, the
Right.
shower.
We'll probably do like a 6 inches, which actually, it sounds small, but it could have visually, it could have a pretty good effect, even pulling it in 6 inches
Yeah.
and causing a little misalignment there.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also follows the rhythm of the original structure, and then the dormer that follows, if the dormer starts not at the ridge but a foot down. See how the third floor has the dormers?
These ones, yeah.
So you're almost mimicking that same component farther out. I think it would be pretty.
Yeah, I think we can make those improvements.
At some point, we do have a letter from an abutter, so.
Okay.
You let me know when you want me to.
Yeah, why don't we I'll read that into the record now, and then we can
I think
continue.
you should have one in
Is it
your, yes, but I didn't point it out earlier, so.
in my yellow folder that I will not take home with me?
Yes, sorry, she blows.
Okay. So, we have a letter received November 12th, 2019, from Paul Healy, 209 Main Street, addressed to Chairperson Virginia Tay. So I will read this into the record. Dear Chairperson Tay and members of the Historic Districts Commission, we reside at the bottom of Pear Tree Hill at 209 Main Street. By way of background, the house is recognized as having been built in 1690 by Daniel Cushing. One of our adult children is researching the property in connection with a book that she is writing about that period. She has reason to believe that the back portion of our home was built in the 1650s. We have made a conscious decision to maintain the footprint of the house as it appears on the 1865 map of Hingham. The property at 215 Main Street, previously occupied by the late Leroy Eldridge and his late wife Susie Belding Eldridge, is beside us and further uphill overlooking our house. As you know, it is a 3-story single-family residence with 18 windows overlooking the south side of our home. Our family has lived next to this property, 215 Main, for over 5 decades, and we are very familiar with it. This includes the impacts on the topography of our home due to the close proximity of both houses to each other. Our houses are separated by a narrow, shallow depression that serves as a collection point for water in serious weather events. We have historically referred to it as the gully. Over time, it has served as a vegetated and treed buffer, offering privacy to both of our homes in terms of sight and sound. The trees in the gully were planted in the 1970s and provide an attractive screen between the respective homes. As you know, Mr. James Magner has entered into an agreement to purchase the property and recently provided me with a copy of the plans that he has submitted to the HDC in connection with the proposed changes to the property at 215 Main Street, the building house. My wife Esther and I have met with Mr. Magner and discussed those plans. The principal change from our vantage point is that the area is in the back of the house. It was formerly a garage, subsequently a doctor's office, and then finally a living quarters for Mrs. Eldridge while she battled ALS. The proposed addition of a second floor in that portion of the house is what we view as a modest expansion. The proposal reflects an awareness and sensitivity of the impacts to us. By its design, it seeks to minimize those changes. This includes a pitched roof with the gable end facing us with a single window on the second floor portion of the proposed addition overlooking our yard. We support that plan. Mr. Magner has expressed his willingness to us to maintain and provide a treed landscape buffer between our homes. This would maintain, continue, and preserve the privacy that both Mr. Magner and we want going forward. This buffer has existed between our house and his for decades. We want to make sure that this continues, most notably in the area of the proposed addition. We support what Mr. Magner is proposing to do based on that approach. We view the change to the house coupled with a treed buffer to be minor in nature. It would allow Mr. Magner to update the house at 215 Main Street, consistent with the proposal that he has submitted to the commission. He has demonstrated his sensitivity to the change he brings to the neighborhood, and for that we are both appreciative and supportive of this proposal. We are in Yorktown on the night that this matter is before you. In the event that this matter is decided in one night, we ask that you add as a condition of approval that a treed vegetated buffer between our house and his be maintained and included in any certificate of appropriateness that is issued. Mr. Magner has represented to us that it is a reasonable request and an acceptable condition for him, as he too wants the privacy that such a buffer will bring. We support his proposal on that basis, and thank you for the work you do on behalf of the citizens and history of this community. Very truly yours, Paul K. Healy, Esther M. Healy. So, long letter, very supportive. I guess my question to Andrea, in regard to the treed vegetated buffer, I would imagine Mr. Magner would be open to maintaining that, but is that something we can actually put, because it's not hardscape, is that something we can add to a motion if that should happen?
We can, because Mr. Magner has agreed to that, and he has, you've received a copy of this letter.
You're in agreement with
Yes.
everything as
We can add,
Yeah.
we can add that as a condition,
Okay,
just to memorialize it.
okay, very good. All right, with that, why don't we continue to the, who would like to speak next? Anybody? Comments?
Catherine stole my thunder.
Mine too, I was
Her
gonna say
changes,
something.
her proposed changes were mine.
Okay.
Really good. My only question was, on the backside currently, by the way, I love the drawings, how you have them existing and proposed right on top of each other, just makes life so much easier.
Very helpful.
We really
Yeah.
appreciate that. But on the existing, it has shingles currently. Is that something that you were thinking of? I see that you were looking to change it to clapboard.
Yes, we debated on that a little bit, and in evaluating what's shingle and what's clapboard back there, it does vary quite a bit, and the shingles have been painted white, so they're not natural right now. So if they were natural, and I think if there was a more substantive area, I think we could have had the argument to match them, but there's really nothing to match since they've been painted solid. And so, and in looking at the clapboard, we just felt like maybe a clapboard continuation is the way to go. So anyway, that was the reasoning for that. But I think natural shingle could have been interesting also. But maybe it would stand out a little more, contrast too much if it's natural shingle and everything else is white clapboard. I'm not sure. I guess that could be, you could make the argument for you there.
I think I like the shingle idea. I think it differentiates it, and it would have probably been a different material at the time, right? Clapboards versus shingles. The carriage house would have been given a less expensive treatment, right? Because the house would be.
I think that'd look nice.
That would be my only comment.
You would like to see them.
I would like to see it shingles. I think it would be natural shingles. I think it would just make it different, yeah.
Okay.
But otherwise, I have no objections to the project at all.
John, Jim, just a question for the commission. The only thing that caught my eye was that connector on Ridgeline. It just seems a little bit low. I mean, I don't think I've ever said this, but you know, it's like maybe maybe it needs to come up a little bit, just beef it up a little bit. And I don't know if you're planning going a second floor to the second floor, or
No,
maybe
it
not that
kills-
high, but.
It just, if it goes any higher, it kills the two French casements that are up there that I was gonna
Oh.
try to maintain.
Is
So
that
we,
what-
so there's
okay.
4 of them now, there's 2 sets of them.
Okay.
And so we were trying to maintain two of them.
I got you.
And so it's as high as it possibly can be. We can lose those windows if it's a big deal, and
No,
just
I-
put some
It-
awnings in or
I
something.
don't think you're gonna see it from the street. It was just kind of from that angle, from the Heelys. It just seems a little, I don't know, that's the only thing that caught my eye, that maybe it could be a little bit more beefy. That's all.
It caught my eye too. It does appear to be weak, but to Hans's point, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
And I think,
Would you want to have a connection from the second floor?
Not particularly. I mean, that room is really cool. The room on the floor plan, this room, it's existing, so it's existing as home office, and then it's maintained as home office, and you can see the French casements is 4 in the existing, and then so 2 here, now in the new. And that room is just really cool and unique, and there's a ton of light that comes into it, so we were actually trying to maintain that as an interesting space. I don't know if it would be a bedroom or an office or whatever, but it's an interesting room right now. And if you lose the height of both of those windows, so you only have windows on the sides of the house, and then the 2 high ones are nice too, but it would just take away from the interior. But it's not a big deal by any means.
For me, it was minor, and maybe if you drop the dormer down a little bit, it'll
Take it away,
compensate
sure.
for it, you know?
now, if you bring that up, so I'm looking at this, the one with the dashed lines on it, bring that up. So right now, you're trying to use the same pitch as the other roof that's there.
Yep.
So if that goes up, you're gonna raise the whole, the gutter line in, well, you don't really have that, because it's kind of tucked into that corner, so I guess it really wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, the pitch of that connector isn't a problem. I mean, we could change that.
We can keep the eve point the same and just raise the,
Like that, yeah, but that kills those windows.
At the
But that would kill the
detriment of
windows, right?
it would have to be replaced with maybe much smaller square
Awnings or
awnings
something,
or
yeah.
something like that.
So you're trying to preserve the natural light in there and the
Yeah.
character of those windows.
Yeah, and you have a view to the backyard, which
Right.
is beautiful, it's a really nice room. It's-
And this proposed second floor above the old garage or the office has its own means of egress, so we're not
Exactly.
looking for a connector.
Exactly.
Well,
Justin, or
And
Carol, or
no,
Hans,
and
you have more? You wanna-
it seems like a reasonable proposal unless there's some
How do you,
deep objection to that connection being the way it is. It seems perfectly reasonable.
I just want to ask the commission, how do you guys feel? I mean, with the arches and, on the side, the gable side, it seems like a little bit more, formal, than if you put shingles in there. I'm just, I don't know. It just the clapboard may look better.
yeah, you've got a shiplap there now around the garage doors?
Yeah, it's some kind of paneling.
Yeah.
Can't recall if it's shiplap or it's, yeah, there are definitely joint lines under these heavy wooden
Yeah.
millwork. That should probably stay.
Yep.
Then you could argue, well, then should everything be white?
Right.
But yeah, I probably wouldn't replace that with shingle inside the arches. You could leave that facade white and just do shingle everywhere else.
Let's do the gable.
It's a little more formal on that side,
Yeah.
right? The way you have it drawn.
What if we did the cheeks of the dormer in shingle?
Right, sometimes you see that.
So
The
keep this
dormer itself
clapboard,
is shingled.
Make that shingle and then make the dormer itself, or the whole back facade shingle maybe?
At this
Or
point, though,
just the
it's,
dormer shingle?
I mean, everything, there's no shingle on the house
Yeah.
now, right?
There is some, it's just been painted white.
Oh,
So that back piece is shingle, that one-story
oh, it is
piece.
as it is, yeah.
And then the back of that two-story addition, only the back wall, I believe, one of the side walls is shingle.
But to your point, it's a massive house, and then to have just such a small part of it only be shingled. I think it might look good if it was all shingled, the whole carriage house, but if you're just gonna do that gable or just a cheek of the dormer, it might look, I don't know. Like, I don't even, are the little doghouse dormers shingled?
These are shingled, actually.
Yeah, so those are
Are they
shingles.
naturally shingled?
Yeah, those
They
are
are, they've
shingles,
just
yeah.
been painted.
So that would
they're not
connect them.
painted. Yeah, no, those are still natural. I think those are the only, you can kind of see it in the last photograph. The side walls of those dormers are shingled. The A-frame side is all painted white, but
So that might make sense then, if those are shingled to do the,
You would emphasize that it was a carriage house, it would go with the windows.
sure.
What about a board and batten treatment? Would that be more appropriate?
vertical.
Vertical with the batten? Would that be more in keeping with the carriage house? My in-laws have a carriage house. It happens to be board and batten. And I thought it's a nice, it defines it. It's actually a little bit more architecturally, visually you can see it from farther away. So maybe it has a little more impact on that side, but there's not a lot of siding on that one side. So I don't know
Yeah.
if it's worth that to show it as a different, board and batten.
I mean, with the exception of that gable end, a lot of what we're talking about here is not visible from a public way, so I think we got to be careful about how far we take this. I feel comfortable leaving it up to the applicant and his design sense with the architect.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you're okay with both options, maybe we'll
Do a site.
color study it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be open to that.
Absolutely.
Are there any other? Anybody else have any more
I had
comments?
one other little thing. From the front, if you're looking at the photographs, on the right-hand side, there's where the L, or the T, I guess, comes out. It's not really,
This piece here.
Removing a door.
they're moving a door, or it used to be a door, a defunct door. It's now kind of a,
I think it's countertop now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the pantry.
Yeah, it is, yes, we are removing that door.
It's a flat
Yeah, it's
slab
actually-
door.
and
It's a pantry, yes, it's a countertop.
so that, it looks like something's missing to me in the proposed drawing, that maybe could think of something, it looks unbalanced to me from the front now.
That there's nothing below that
That there's
window.
nothing below that little
Oh, I
window.
see.
Talk
So-
about
Sure.
this facade here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just wondering if maybe, I don't know, the date of the,
You can
of the,
see,
yeah. The date of that addition, if that's got the
Two-story
significance
piece,
on
it's,
itself?
I don't have the date, but it's probably from early, I mean, that's also old. I mean, it's from early 1900s, probably,
Yeah.
maybe even
It's
late
definitely-
1800s.
Yeah.
Could
Feels
you-
as old as the house.
so Catherine,
Not original, but-
another double hung below, but still one that would work on top of the countertop?
Fine.
Or could you just leave the door?
You could leave the door and just paint it
Just-
kinda,
Leave the door and
fine.
infill on the
facade?
inside,
Yeah.
so it stays.
But the double hung will be more functional, bring some light into that pantry space.
It would be nice to have light. in
You
the
would just lose, you'd lose your upper cabinets? Is that what's proposed there?
Yeah, you got a window in there already.
Oh, that's true, but
I mean, I'm fine
leave
either
it-
way with that one.
Yeah.
Leaving the door is probably
There's an
the
existing
easiest, and then
window,
just
yeah.
build a wall behind it.
I think you mentioned. like a
Oh, I
phone.
had, in town, I've seen where there's a defunct window or someone wanted to make a change on the interior and have more wall space or for whatever reason. They often put shutters. They'll have the frame and the casings and then treat it with a shutter. And I don't know if that's a possibility. You could do it with door size shutters or maybe window size shutters to match the existing window below. And then it's a gesture towards what used to be there, but not, it just looks like it's missing something to me in there.
We did do that with a, if you all recall,
Yeah.
Lower Main Street near Garrison. We did do
Yeah,
do
the
that to
Kennedy's
fill in the
house.
space. Yes, thank you.
It kind of keeps the evolution, the history and the evolution of the home, just,
That sounds good to me.
yeah, so leave it.
So are we saying put a faux window there with shutters on it?
Is it the shutters are closed?
Right.
does that appeal?
Casing, nice historic casing, and then shutters inside of it.
Prefer the door shutter idea or the window shutter idea?
So I would support, I mean, have a false door there is going to create some confusion. I would support either a window that is truly a window or one that is enclosed, as we've done in the past. So it's just
Window
facade.
shutters, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
Is the door functional now?
It is, well,
Is it wood?
define
Wood
functional.
door?
Yeah, it's an old,
Aluminum thing.
yeah, no, it's a wood
Getting rid of the
plank door.
will improve your finish.
Here, you can see it.
I love it. We're gonna need a whole nother meeting about that.
So is there a preference
Fire door.
on your part?
I think
as
the
to
window
an
would-
actual window or
I
a
would
faux
pref-
window?
I think the faux window,
Faux window?
yeah. I don't need additional light there. There's a window above it that we could size similarly. So, yeah, that works.
It's a faux window with a
Shutters
pair of
closed.
wood shutters
Closed. Yeah.
as a facade treatment.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. Any other comments? Questions? No? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I can do that.
Good, Ben.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for 215 Main Street. Make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 215 Main Street plans. Plans dated October 30th, 2019. Plans as drawn with the following exceptions. A, 1.1, street facing in the proposed pantry, first floor. A faux window with trim detail to match existing windows and shutters in a closed state. Drawing A 2.2, proposed side elevation in the rear above the office, the first floor office, dormer, rigid dormer to be dropped. John, what are you saying? What could you do here? 8 inches?
Maybe, let's say a minimum 8 inches, and then if we can do more, we'll do more.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So a minimum of 8 inches, dropping the dormer ridge, bringing the dormer wall in an additional 6 inches. The dormer wall, that would be the bearing wall, so facing the backyard, not the cheek wall. Cladding. What did we decide cladding on A 2.2C? Is that
Leaving it to
up to
discretion
the,
of the owner.
right, okay. So in turn, the cladding's going to be left up to the applicant. It is, options include board and batten, shingle, or clapboard, or combination of those. The landscape, right?
Yes.
So, as submitted. Right. Maintain and provide the treed landscape buffer between 206.
207.
207. 207 and the applicant at 215.
Actually, I think it's 209.
It's 209.
Oh, he's 209.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, 209. To maintain and provide that treed landscape buffer.
Good. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good job.
Very much. Jim.
Thank you,
Cheers,
Jim.
guys. Thank
you
you.
all.
Bye, guys.
So, John, if you can just provide just that, the necessary drawings when the changes are made. Okay, yep. You can just send them to me, email, and I can, yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
So the last item on our agenda is to review the minutes
Miss Sherry's minutes from October.
from October.
Sherry, by the way, would have been with us tonight, but she's actually on a ghosts and graveyards tour,
Oh,
Oh, my.
which actually I went on and I can highly recommend. No, it goes all year long, but and the reason that her daughter, Sherry's daughter, is an actress and is in charge of she's one of the ghosts. Her name is Hazel, and she's just a fabulous actress, and it's great fun. So if you're wondering what to do,
Where is it?
you get on, is it by the Marriott? It's by you can park at the aquarium, it's down that way.
all right. Long Wharf Marriott?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where the ticket booth is, and
Yeah.
they do other trolley rides and stuff, but this little ghosts and graveyards. But you have to, nobody younger than 13 is allowed, so.
Sounds scary. Was it scary?
No, well, no, but interesting. It's fabulously interesting. Little tidbits that you just don't even know about Boston. So, you'd find it surprising. So, you want to go through the minutes? Are there any changes?
I didn't see any. These are the same as what were mailed out, emailed out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to refresh your memories.
Okay.
I can make a motion.
All right.
Are you done, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay. Thomas?
Motion to approve the minutes for Thursday, October 17, 2019.
For a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. 8:37 PM.
8:37.
All right.